Have you ever stood at the edge of your happiest day, surrounded by flowers and smiles, only to feel the ground crack beneath you? I did. Right there, in the middle of my wedding reception, with champagne glasses clinking and laughter echoing off the walls of that sunlit hall. I was in my white dress, the one that made me feel like I could conquer anything, my hand warm in my husband's, my groom's strong grip. But then my father's voice cut through it all, sharp as a winter wind. "She couldn't hack military life," he boomed, his laugh booming louder, like he was sharing the punchline to a joke everyone already knew. And in that moment, everything I had built, the scars, the triumphs, the quiet nights staring at the stars, wondering if I was enough, felt like it was crumbling. My name is Elena. And this is the story of how one man's doubt tried to steal my light, but instead it lit a fire that would silence him forever. You see, I wasn't always the woman in that dress. I grew up in a small town where dreams were supposed to be safe, wrapped in picket fences and Sunday dinners. My dad, Robert, was the rock of our family, or so I thought. Tall, with that booming voice and stories of his own glory days in the service, back when he was a young sergeant full of pride. He made the military sound like a fairy tale, the place where real men, and I guess he meant only men, became heroes. But when I turned 18, fresh out of high school with fire in my veins, I looked at him and said, "Dad, I'm enlisting. I want to serve, just like you," his face. Oh, it twisted like I'd slapped him. "Elena, that's no place for a girl like you," he said, his words dripping with that protective anger he called love. "It's rough. It's not for fragile hearts." Fragile. That word stuck to me like mud, heavy and cold. I loved him, so I pushed it down, told myself he was just scared. But deep inside, a seed of doubt took root. Was I really cut out for this? Could a girl from a quiet town really march into the unknown? Basic training was my first real test. The days blurred into nights of endless drills, my muscles screaming, my mind a whirlwind of give-up whispers. I remember the first time I collapsed during a run, mud caking my face, tears mixing with the rain. My drill sergeant loomed over me, not with pity but with a question. "You quitting, soldier?" I shook my head, pushed up on shaking arms, and finished that run. But in the quiet of the barracks, when the lights went out, I'd think of Dad's words. Fragile. And it hurt more than the blisters on my feet. Yet something shifted in me there, under those harsh skies. I found strength I didn't know I had. I excelled in marksmanship, led my squad through night maneuvers that left others broken. By the end of those grueling months, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Graduation day, when they pinned that uniform on me, felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. I called Dad, my voice steady for the first time. "I did it, Dad, I'm in." There was a pause on the line, long and heavy. "Proud of you, kid," he finally said, but it sounded hollow, like an echo from someone else's life. Life in the military became my world. Deployments to dusty corners of the world, where the air tasted of sand and fear. I lost friends to the shadows of war. Not in the way you might think, but to the weight of it all, the way it carves you hollow. I bandaged wounds under fire, coordinated evacuations that saved lives I never even saw. And through it all, I wrote letters home, pouring out my heart to Dad, hoping he'd see me. Not the daughter he wanted to protect, but the woman I was becoming. His replies. Short. Stay safe. Come home soon. No questions about the medals I'd earned, no wonder at the stories I shared. It was like I was shouting into a void. Then came Alex, my groom. We met during a joint exercise in the desert. 2 units colliding like fate had a sense of humor. He was a captain, with eyes like calm oceans and a smile that cut through the chaos. One night, after a briefing that ran late, we sat under the stars, sharing canteen water and secrets. "What keeps you going out here?" he asked, his voice soft against the hum of generators. I hesitated, then told him about Dad. The doubts, the fragile label. Alex listened, really listened, his hand brushing mine. "Elena," he said, "you're not fragile. You're forged, like steel and fire." In that moment, something bloomed in me, warm and real. For the first time, I felt seen. Our love grew in stolen moments, letters folded into uniforms, video calls across time zones, promises whispered in the dark. When I proposed to him, yes, me on one knee in fatigues, he laughed, that deep, joyful sound, and pulled me up. "Yes, soldier." 1,000 times yes. We planned the wedding for when I rotated home, a simple affair in our hometown church, with wildflowers and the people who mattered. I dreamed of Dad walking me down the aisle, his arm steady, his eyes shining with the pride I'd chased for so long. But dreams, as I learned, have a way of fracturing. The day arrived like a gift wrapped in sunlight. I stood in the bridal suite, lace whispering against my skin, my reflection a stranger, soft curves in white, but with the unyielding posture of a woman who'd stared down storms. Mom fussed with my veil, her eyes misty. "You're glowing, Elena." And I was. Until the ceremony. Dad at the end of the aisle, handsome in his suit, but his jaw tight like he was holding back a tide. We exchanged vows under stained glass, Alex's voice steady as he promised to stand by me, in peace and in battle. "I salute your strength, Elena. Every day." Tears pricked my eyes. This was it, our forever. The reception hall buzzed with joy. Tables draped in ivory, laughter weaving through toasts. Friends from the unit raised glasses to the power couple of the Corps. I danced with Alex, his hand on my waist, the world narrowing to just us. But then came the toasts. Cousins, then Mom, her words sweet and tearful. And finally, Dad. He stood glass in hand, the room quieting. I smiled at him, heart open, waiting for the words I'd earned. But what came next? It was like a knife slipping between ribs, slow and unexpected. "Folks," he started, his voice carrying that old charisma. "I've watched this girl, my Elena, chase dreams that weren't meant for her. She couldn't hack military life." A chuckle escaped him, then another, rippling out to awkward laughs from relatives who didn't know better. "Remember when she came home on leave, all tough talk? But we all know it'll break her eventually. Good thing she's got Alex now to bring her back to reality." The room froze. Smiles faltered. My cheeks burned, not with joy, but with a shame that tasted like ash. Betrayed. Right there on my wedding day, by the man who'd sworn to protect me. How could he? After everything? I gripped Alex's hand under the table, my nails digging in, fighting the sob clawing up my throat. The applause was polite, scattered, but it echoed like thunder in my ears. Dad sat down, oblivious, clapping me on the back like it was all in fun. "Just kidding, kiddo." But it wasn't. It was every doubt he'd planted blooming into public humiliation. The rest of the night blurred. Smiles I forced, dances I endured. Inside, I was shattering, piece by piece. Why now? Why today, when I was finally whole? As the night wore on, I slipped away to the quiet of the garden outside the hall, the cool air a balm on my flushed skin. Stars winked overhead, mocking my tears. Alex found me there, his tie loosened, concern etching his face. "Elena..." He pulled me close, his uniform jacket, still half-buttoned from the ceremony, warm against me. I buried my face in his chest, the words tumbling out in whispers. "He doesn't see me, Alex, he never has. All those years, all that pain. For what? To be laughed at like I'm a joke?" He held me tighter, his breath steady. "He doesn't get to define you. Not anymore." We stood like that, the party murmurs fading until I pulled back, wiping my eyes. But it hurts. So much. Alex's gaze hardened, not with anger, but resolve. "Then let's show him. Not with words, with truth. You deserve that." In that moment, something shifted in me. The broken girl from basic training? She was still there, but beside her stood the woman who'd led under fire. And with Alex, I wasn't alone. We talked, low and fierce, piecing together a plan. Not revenge in the angry sense. No, something quieter, more powerful. A revelation. Because Dad's words weren't just empty. They hid his own shadows. Secrets I'd uncovered years ago, buried under layers of his pride. You see, Dad's stories of glory? They weren't all true. During a quiet visit home, I'd found old letters in the attic, yellowed pages from his commanding officer. Dishonorable discharge. Not for bravery, but for cowardice under pressure, abandoning his post in a moment of crisis. He'd spun it into tales of bureaucracy, but the truth was uglier. Fear had won that day, and he'd projected it onto me, his fragile daughter, to hide his own fractures. I never confronted him. Love kept me silent, but now it was time. The pain of that toast lingered like a bruise, throbbing with every heartbeat. Back inside, I watched Dad from across the room, holding court with uncles, his laugh too loud. Each guffaw twisted the knife deeper. How many times had I called from deployments, voice shaking after a close call, only for him to change the subject? When are you coming home, Elena? This isn't you. As if my service was a phase, a rebellion he'd outwait. The realization hit me then, full force. His doubt wasn't protection. It was control. A way to keep me small, so his own failures didn't loom so large. That night, as guests thinned, the ache settled into resolve. I lay awake beside Alex in our hotel room, the moon casting silver on the walls. What if he never changes? I whispered. Alex turned to me, his fingers tracing my palm. Then we rise anyway. For us. Sleep came fitful, dreams tangled with boot prints in mud and the snap of salutes. Morning brought clarity. We'd face it, not with shouts, but with honor. The salute Alex had vowed? It would be our weapon, sharp and unspoken. Days turned to weeks, our honeymoon a brief oasis of beaches and whispered plans. But the wound festered. Letters from home arrived, polite notes from Mom glossing over the toast. Your father was just joking. As if words couldn't wound deeper than bullets. I threw myself into work, prepping for a promotion ceremony that had been whispers for months. Top brass had noticed my leadership, a commendation for that evacuation in the sandstorm, lives pulled from wreckage. It was real, earned. And in the quiet of my office, I'd polish my boots, staring at Dad's photo on my desk. Why couldn't you be proud? The question hung, unanswered. Then came the call. Mom, voice trembling. Elena's promotion, it's official. Ceremony next month. Will you come, Robert? Silence on the line, then his gruff, of course. For her. But I knew better. It was obligation, not joy. Alex and I talked it through over late-night coffee, steam curling like secrets. We invite the family, he said. Make it big. And when the moment comes... His eyes met mine, fierce. I salute you, fully, and the truth comes out, not to destroy, but to free. My heart raced. It wasn't about dragging Dad down. It was about lifting me up, letting the light expose what shadows hid. The plan felt right, cinematic almost, like the movies where the underdog claims her crown. As the ceremony neared, doubt crept in again. What if it backfired? What if his laugh echoed louder? Nights I'd pace, Alex's arms my anchor. You're not fragile, Elena. Remember the fire. And I did. The girl who'd run through rain, who'd held a friend's hand as the chopper lifted off. That woman? She was ready. The betrayal had cracked me open, but from the fissures, strength poured out. No more hiding. No more silence. Music intensifies, drums joining the strings for a rising crescendo. Voice gains power, laced with anticipation. The day of the promotion dawned crisp, the base parade ground alive with flags snapping in the breeze. Rows of chairs filled with family, fellow soldiers in crisp uniforms, the air humming with pride. I stood at attention, heart pounding like artillery, my dress blues hugging me like a second skin. Alex beside me, his presence a steady hum. Mom in the front row dabbing her eyes. And Dad, stoic, arms crossed, that familiar jaw set. Did he see the medals pinned to my chest? The ones he'd dismissed as trinkets? The commanding officer's voice boomed over the speakers. Sergeant Elena Ramirez for exemplary leadership and valor. Applause thundered as the new bars were pinned, gold catching the sun. I saluted, crisp and true, my chest swelling. This was mine, earned in sweat and sacrifice. Then the general nodded to Alex. Captain, if you'd do the honors. He stepped forward, eyes locked on mine, and raised his hand, not in a casual wave, but a full, formal salute. The kind reserved for heroes, for those who've stared down the abyss and emerged unbroken. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dad shifted in his seat, brow furrowing. Alex held it, unwavering, then lowered his hand and spoke, his voice clear as a bugle call. Elena, you've faced battles I can only imagine, not just on the field, but in the hearts of those who should have believed in you first. A pause, the world holding its breath. Your father once said you couldn't hack this life. But look at you now, promoted, honored, unbreakable. Murmurs swelled. Dad's face paled, his knuckles white on the chair arm. Alex continued, gentle but unyielding. We all carry our stories. Some of glory, some of regret. Robert, I know yours. The letters, the discharge, not for cowardice, but for a moment when fear won. We all have those. But Elena? She chose courage. Every day. The words hung, not accusatory, but revealing, like sunlight piercing fog. Dad's mouth opened, then closed, his eyes wide with the shock of exposure. No laugh this time, just silence, heavy and final. The crowd erupted, cheers crashing over us, but I only saw him, Dad, shrinking into himself, the mask cracking. I stepped to Alex, our hands clasping, and together we turned to the assembly. Another salute, this one from me to the woman I'd become. Tears streamed down Mom's face, proud and pained. Relatives whispered, piecing it together. And Dad? He rose slowly, applause washing over him, but his gaze met mine across the divide. Not anger, no, something rawer, regret. Elena, he mouthed, but the words died. In the aftermath, as families mingled and brass hats congratulated, Dad approached, tentative like a man crossing a minefield. I didn't know you knew. His voice cracked, the boom gone. I looked at him, heart aching but whole. I always knew, Dad, but I served anyway. For me. He nodded, tears glistening, first I'd ever seen. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. We didn't hug, not yet. But it was a start. The silence he'd earned wasn't punishment. It was space for truth to breathe. That night, Alex and I drove home under a canopy of stars. The weight lifted, like shedding battle gear after a long march. Peace settled in my bones, not the fragile kind, but the kind forged in fire. I'd faced the betrayal, not with bitterness, but with grace. And in silencing his doubt, I'd found my voice. Music softens to a poignant melody, piano and cello weaving closure. Looking back, that wedding toast wasn't the end. It was the spark. Betrayal stings deepest from those we love, but it doesn't have to define us. It can refine us if we let it. I learned that true strength isn't in never falling, but in rising with eyes wide open. And family? It's not blood that binds us. It's the choice to see each other, really see, beyond the fears we hide. If you're listening, carrying your own doubts or wounds from words that cut too deep, hear this. You are enough. Salute yourself today, because the battles you win inside, they're the ones that echo forever. Thank you for sharing this piece of my heart. If this story touched you, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever turned pain into power? Until next time, keep rising.